Now comes the really, really fun part where we try to take this talk and see if it makes any sense whatsoever. I talked with Dimeen yesterday. I was kicking around various ideas about what I wanted to speak about, and I never write a talk until I'm inspired to. And nothing had come to me. And then Dimeen and I talked, and just in the course of we must have talked for a half hour, maybe longer, I don't recall. But we were talking about operational issues and other things, but in talking, so much got teased out about the issue I wanted to talk about today, and I thought the key, really, that I would like to talk about is staying centered in God in a time of significant change. This is really the big issue. We haven't been here in 7 months. Who'd have thunk it? And the knock-on effects of being closed for 7 months, it doesn't just affect the church. You know, the school, gosh, there are dozens of kids who didn't re-up at the school because they're being homeschooled. There are a few of them doing online learning, but most are homeschooled. And when you remove a chunk of kids, the financial effects, other effects, they're significant. And it leads those of us, for example, on the board, really in uncharted territory. What do we do with all this? So we too, just like the rest of you, are feeling a lot of the change. And what's different about this is, as I stated, it's uncharted. So some of the old methodologies or routines or checklists or procedures simply don't apply anymore. And it's a time, when that happens, it's a time then to fall back on not just experience, but also to bring other minds together. So what I did, I called Lawrence Palmer. He's spoken here. He's the minister down at Unity in Pompano. I really hit it off with him. You know, I like everyone who comes and speaks here. I enjoy him. But he and I just really hit it off for some reason. And he sent me a book called Canoeing in the Mountains. And Canoeing in the Mountains is a very powerful book. I haven't finished it. It's dense reading. And you know, I thought learning the law was dense reading, or being in insurance and policies and all that language, technical and legal language, is challenging. I found this book to be very challenging because it's talking about church leadership, congregation members, everyone. It's about finding people and methodologies to take these new ingredients that are our present reality and to make something new out of them, and we've never done it before, and nobody has. And he wrote the book pre-pandemic, obviously, but the book was talking about there's been a time of change anyway. Most people really don't go to church now. And I'm not sure, this is personal editorial, I'm not sure we're the better for that. But that said, there is a new reality. The beauty of unity is, though, we have got these magnificent, brilliant, to me, life-saving Fillmorian principles, these Christ truth principles, which just make life so wonderful. And so we will always have our niche, because there are people who simply are seeking these truths, and they're just wonderful, and they work so well in life. Now, with all the changes going on, you know, we've got a big political election. We've seen the changes here at the church and the school. Of course, the pandemic itself has changed everything. Whether you want to go to a movie or go out to eat or see friends or this, that, or the other, there's always a rule. And we even ran into these rules just trying to open the church, not just measuring the distance between chairs, but you're not allowed to sing hymns. Isn't that something? Because I love singing hymns, and I've looked at the faces of everybody when you're singing hymns, and you guys seem to like it too. So we will get back there. This is all temporary. This has come to pass. As Mary Kupferle would say, it's come to pass. A gentleman named Jeffrey Gitomer said, "Change is not a four-letter word, but often our reaction to it is." I thought, God, he's been looking in on my life. Now, knowing how to react to these changes, as I explained earlier, often we don't have the answer. But there was another wonderful quote by an unknown author who said, "I used to think I was indecisive, but now I'm not so sure." So with this in mind, I want to go back to the basics. Charlene and I have talked about this at length, and also have talked with Lori about it. Unity's strength is the basics, the fundamental unity principles. And they are not for lightweights. Unity principles are not hard to understand, but it takes diligence to put them into practice. We have to be diligent. I want to be lazy sometimes, and that doesn't work. And I find sometimes if not all my wheels are on the pavement and I figure out, oh, it's because I haven't been praying, I haven't been meditating, I haven't been taking the time in the silence. Right now we're living in a world where everything is in the outer. There's a lot of noise. That's not what's going to get us there, ever. It's always turning within. So we talked about putting together a reading list of basic unity books that if you read them, it just really centers all of us. And as I said, with the title of the talk and all, staying centered in God at this time is more important now than ever. Now's the time to be centered because none of this is too big a deal. There is nothing in life that's too big a deal if we're centered in God. So Chris Chenoweth had a wonderful daily inspiration. He talked about the parable of the lost sheep, and I know most of you have heard the story, but bear with me here because this is really about each one of us. So the parable of the lost sheep says, "Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones." By the way, this is Matthew 18, verses 10 through 14. And it says, "Take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I say to you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. For the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, does he not leave the 99 and go to the mountains to seek the one who is straying? And if he should find it, assuredly, I say to you, he rejoices more over that sheep than over the 99 that did not go astray. Even so, it is not the will of your Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish." Jesus was often criticized for associating with immoral people. Especially, he was known for associating with the Pharisees. And these were highly conservative religious leaders who couldn't see past their own human rules. Jesus replied in a parable talking about his mission to help those who are lost. And in times like this, I've actually had friends mention to me they felt really off kilter. People have described feeling like they were in a fog or nothing seemed normal. They were craving a routine. And that's a form of being lost. And it's okay. It's temporary. But Jesus replied in a parable about his mission to help those of us when we're lost, as well as those who are constantly by his side. And Jesus drew from this parable an illustration of God's love for everyone. In the Judean wilderness, even today, a shepherd will appoint other shepherds to watch over his flock while he goes to find a lost sheep. In the twisted folds and narrow canyons of the wilderness, it is easy for sheep to stray into the open mouth of a cave or wander aimlessly down into a valley riverbed. The shepherd will search and call out for the lost sheep, sometimes throwing stones at the mouths of caves to scare the sheep out of hiding. Once a shepherd has found the sheep, He will place the lamb on his shoulder, grabbing its feet in one hand, while keeping his other hand free to hold his staff and defend against attacking animals. Boy, I hope the pay is good for being a shepherd. That sounds like a lot of work. The shepherd can often be heard singing, rejoicing that the sheep that was lost is now found. Jesus' answer to the Pharisees reveals that God is constantly guarding and caring for each of us. God particularly goes to much effort to find those who have gone astray from the security and peace of the flock. So, of course, the message there is, no matter how badly we feel, how far off the track maybe we think we've gone, God's right there. God is right there, and help is going to be on the way, no matter how discouraged we feel. In our lives, Jesus is often referred to as the Good Shepherd, and if we go astray, we can be confident that divine guidance will come and search for us, and we will be lifted up and brought safely home. And as Chris Chenoweth writes, then there will be much rejoicing, for the sheep that was lost now is found. So this is a very important parable for us, and we really need to take it to heart, because we like to talk about things. We like to talk about everything that's wrong, when in fact we should really be rejoicing about everything that's right, because what is right so far outweighs things that are wrong. It's not even a contest. And where we put our focus, of course, as we all know, is what manifests in our life. Now, the key to thriving in change like this is to keep our faith strong. There is a story, and I'm just paraphrasing it now, but Unity headquarters many years ago, when the Fillmores were still there and working, they had more than one time where things were tight financially, other issues, and one of the staff members was heard to say to Myrtle Fillmore, boy, we sure hope our money holds out. And Myrtle said, no, we need to hope that our faith holds out, because that's the secret. That's a reverse thinking, to think the money's got to hold out. No. When the faith holds out, when our faith is in place, everything else settles out properly. It's always that way. That's an inexorable law of God's kingdom. Always, always, always. When my faith is weak, I can see it in my life. And when I'm all prayed up, I feel a difference. I definitely feel a difference. There's a gentleman named Timber Hawkeye, and he wrote, "You can't calm the storm, so stop trying. What you can do is calm yourself, and the storm will pass." And then an anonymous author wrote, "Ships don't sink because of the water around them. Ships sink because of the water that gets in them. Don't let what's happening around you get inside you and weigh you down." Now, Unity teachings are always making it clear to us that we have a choice. I've said this a number of times up here, but Unity is not for the faint of heart. Unity thinking, it requires us to make a choice. Having a strong faith always starts with making a choice. If we don't make a choice, nothing is ever going to change in the outer. It hasn't in my life. The times I felt the worst was when I wasn't doing my part. But the fascinating thing is, once we make the choice and we're willing to follow guidance, God, this is a secret, God takes care of all of the, as Mike Dooley calls them, the cursed hows. He said, don't worry about the cursed hows. If you have a dream, if you have a goal, if you want to shoot for something in life, don't worry about how it's going to happen. Just resolve with God that you want it to happen and that you are willing to listen and follow. That's a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? I've always thought I had to figure out all the mechanism of how I had to get there. Turns out that just happens. As Mary Cufferly used to say, talk to God. He's waiting. He's waiting. He's saying, put me to work. But instead, I talk to God and I tell God how it's got to be, which is just, sorry, I laugh. That's just dumb. It's squandering the most incredible resource in my life. Now, somehow I ended up with a lot of Chris Chenoweth. I was actually looking at other writers and authors, but he writes, power in life is not the result of luck. And from Hebrews 7, verses 24 and 25, he holds his priesthood permanently because he continues forever. Consequently, he is able for all time to save those who draw near to God through him, since he always lives to make intercession for them. Jesus is always waiting to say, call on me. God is always waiting to intercede on our behalf. Always. I think a lot of us have a tough time believing that because maybe we don't feel so highly of ourselves. Maybe we have low self-esteem, or we feel sad, or we just don't think we deserve it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I've had people tell me when I felt low, absolutely, you're loved beyond measure. Everyone in this room is loved beyond measure. You were created by God, which is really a spectacular thought. The best things in life are not the result of luck. They come directly to you from your source of life, and that is God. Now, Chris tells this great story about a woman named Maud. Before I tell this story, though, it reminded me story. In Delray, we used to have a semi-pro football team. It was called the Delray Wildcats. I think it was part of the Sunshine League. These leagues come and go, and semi-pro football players are just the lowest life form on the planet. Those poor guys, they never get paid. People never want to pay to see their games. They don't have all the luxuries and niceties of real professional football players. They just are scratching and clawing, trying to somehow get a real job with a real team at some point. But this fella on the Delray Wildcats, he used to tape inside his shoulder pads a 4-leaf clover, a rabbit's foot, 4 ace cards of each of the sweets, and he used to duct tape his crucifix, his cross, to his chest because that's the only thing the sweat didn't make come off. The guy was a walking group of icons. And here's the thing. There is a commandment that says, thou shalt have no gods before me. No false gods. Well, when I look at something in the outer and I think that is going to be my source of prosperity or happiness or peace or whatever, I have created a false god. Because all of those things are of God, and it's an inside-out job, not outside-in. And I can't speak for you, I forget that still. To this day, it happens to me. So Chris writes a story about this woman, Maud. He said, I knew a lady whose name I will call Maud. Apparently it's not Maud, but that's for this story. There we go. He first met her 18 years earlier before he'd written this article, and she had a plastic replica of Jesus on the dashboard of her car. She had a rabbit's foot on her keychain, which she kept in her pocket at all times, and she had a 3-leaf clover in the plastic wallet of her purse, and those were her lucky charms. She'd rub the rabbit's foot constantly. She'd look to the plastic Jesus, and every once in a while, if she really needed luck, she'd touch the 3-leaf clover. And she'd hope and pray that God would look upon her with mercy because these things had power. That was her words to Chris. She and her son took a car trip, and they were about 180 miles from their home when she started having a panic attack because she realized she had left plastic Jesus back home. And her son saw this and he asked, Mom, what's wrong? And she literally started gasping for air. She was panicking. She was literally panicking. And once he realized what the problem, he said, I'm turning around, we're going to go home right now. And she said, no, I don't want to ruin our vacation. I'll get over this. I told him, I'll get over this. But she was beginning to have a full-blown anxiety attack. Then all of a sudden, they passed a billboard on the highway that said, in all caps, God is with you now. And she said, at that moment, I knew that was true. And she said, yeah. She said, I still was in a sweat. And I was feeling nervous, but over time, I started to think about God and how God works in my life. And over time, she started to calm down, and they were able to continue their trip. And she said, if God was with her right now, what could go wrong in her life? Nothing could go wrong, and it changed her life from that moment on. A gentleman named Montaigne said, man is certainly stark mad. He can't make a worm, and yet he will make gods by the dozens. What have we made gods of in our lives? Sometimes we even make gods of our limitations. The things that imprison us, we may think that it's funny that we make a god of our own prison cell, but many of us have. It happens every day. And I thought about that, and I have a good friend. I've known him for over 10 years now, and it occurred to me a few years ago, he doesn't know how to be happy. He had some challenges in his life, but that all worked out, and he has a good job, he has some financial security, he's married to a woman who really loves him, they have a beautiful home, and every time I talk to him, he goes, oh, I'm struggling today. And we have a mutual friend, and a mutual friend of mine, we spoke, and my friend said, I'll call him Joe, the man in question. He said, I don't think Joe knows how to be happy. And I thought about those images. For example, when I saw a video once of beagle dogs that had been in medical labs being tested all their lives, and when they brought them out into a beautiful grassy area, when they'd been emancipated, they opened the cages and the dogs wanted nothing to do with that grass. All they had known was the cage. And I thought, boy, that's something I should think about. What am I doing where I embrace the limitations? Can't do that, because as Unity teaches us, we have choice, and that is a powerful thing. And sometimes I'm not sure we all want to have it, because then we don't have an excuse. Chris Chenoweth writes, the hardest thing that you have to do in your life will be to venture out into that area where you are unsure of yourself. But remember, as the billboard said, God is with you now. Pretty soon you'll be going further and further, and we've evolved past the point where we need to depend on luck or charms. They have no power. God has the only power in your life. And he goes on to write, there is no such thing as luck. Nothing comes by chance. All things happen as a result of faith or lack of faith. Wow. It really is simple. You have to do the work, but that's pretty good. He also wrote something that we've always spoken a lot about in this church over the years, and that is God's help is instant and automatic. The moment you ask for it, it just keeps coming and coming and coming. There is no delay. We think there's a delay sometimes, because sometimes God's help doesn't take the form that we projected it should take. But maybe if we can try something different and just say, okay, I asked, I put it out there, I know God is doing a powerful work in the invisible, and I'm just going to trust. That was another of Mary Cufferly's big isms. You know, she used to say, Father, I am trusting. Father, I am trusting. She would say it over and over and over. And she said sometimes it would take me 15, 20 minutes before I believed it. And this is Mary Cufferly. I think, boy, you ought to believe it automatically. She said, no, I have to work it all the time. All right. Oh, so then finally, I found one other Chris Chenoweth story with regard to there's no such thing as luck. He wrote, sometimes we get overwhelmed with what needs to be done, and therefore we freeze and do nothing. I've had that feeling. Anybody had that feeling just in the past 7, 8, 9, 10 months? I don't know what to do, so what do? Oh, I'll just do nothing. That's my strongest thing, is doing nothing. I'm great at it. And he wrote, that's not the answer. That's not God's will. Do what you can. Do what you must. And then God will do the rest. So he wrote a really great story. I love this. He says, when you're in doubt about anything in your life, when you're feeling badly about yourself, when success seems to be eluding you, no matter what the issue, try helping another person that day. It can even be something small. just help another person. He said, I often suggest to people, pick one person a day, brighten their lives, and help them. Time multiplies this good. He goes, if you do one person a day times 365 days, that is a major impact. He said, plus I've seen how many times God can multiply in miraculous ways the one person effect. He said back in 1980, by the way, Chris has spoken here a couple of times. He's very successful with his ministry. But he said back in 1980, I was trying to get into ministerial school. I was placed on a wait list up at Unity headquarters, which meant I would probably not be getting into school until the next year. So I needed to get a job to support myself in the meantime. So he said, I'm on my way driving to a job interview when I drove past an accident. I vaguely recognized the lady standing there by the two police officers, and I decided to turn back and help. I gave her a ride, I took her to the doctor, and I spent the whole day with Mrs. Brown, was her name. What a distinguished name. I found out later that she was in a very high position in the ministerial school, and I was enrolled in the school the next week. But his motivation was out of love for another person, not because he thought, hey, if I do good, there may be a hook in it for me somewhere else. Our motivation always has to be because we feel the connection and the warmth of the love for another person, or for helping a situation, for increasing the expression of abundance and love and happiness and joy in humanity. Always, 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 there will be a payoff, but you will get it up front in feeling better. And then anything after that is just a dividend. It's just gravy. So that was my takeaway from it. I just love that story. And of course, look, that was 1980. This is 2020. That was 40 years ago. Look at everything he's done as a result of some of the breaks he's had. Now, Mike Dooley, who writes Tut Notes from the Universe. Any of you subscribe to Tut Notes from the Universe? A few of you. He writes, for every setback, disappointment, and heartbreak, ask yourself, what does this create the opportunity for? That's been happening a lot this year, hasn't it, for people? What does this create the opportunity for? And therein you will find the gift. It is always love, healing, and happiness. That's always the gift, no matter what the setback. You just have to be sure we don't label it bad. Once again, we have the power of the word. It's very strong. So the solution is to stay centered in God in time of change. Always go to God first. Charles Fillmore called it going to headquarters. God does the work. And our job is to turn to God as Jesus taught us, and to, quote, let God handle all. That was the title of an article by Mary Kupferle. And as Mike Dooley said, I mentioned earlier, he said, we don't have to know the cursed hows. We don't have to know how the blessing is going to come. We don't have to know how God has planned fixing this situation or bringing on the blessing. That's none of our business. Our business is to turn to God and sincerely ask for the blessing we wish. Now, Mary Kupferle wrote, you are a precious, beloved child of God. And she said, here with reassurance, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. That is Luke 15, verse 31. You are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. Now, I'm going to finish by reading one of my favorite little prayers from a dog-eared, grimy prayer book I got 30 years ago from Unity, Silent Unity. And I had to make a photocopy because the page itself is just so beat up by now. This is one of the 7 prayers that they included in the book. So would you all just listen carefully to this, and let me know what you think about it later. You feel free to leave a message or whatnot. I find this particularly comforting. God takes my hand, and by the way, no, this is for you. This is speaking for each one of you. God takes my hand and leads me safely through difficult places. There is a saving, healing power closer to me than my heartbeat. I am never helpless or alone. I am never entirely dependent on myself. God, my friend, is with me, offering every good thing to me. God is ready and able to help whatever my need may be. Turn to God now and say quietly, God, I need your help. I cannot handle everything alone. I know that you can do what I cannot. I have faith in your guiding, loving presence ever with me. Comfort will come to you if you're grieving. Strength will come to you if you're weak. Faith will fill your heart and mind if you're feeling fearful. Love will transform your emotions and dissolve bitterness or resentment. God takes your hand and leads you safely through difficult places. God is your comfort, your strength, your inspiration, your never-failing help. And from Psalm 34, verse 17, when the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and delivers them out of all of their troubles. Any of the seeming setbacks or problems that we felt in our lives this year, recently, whenever, just know that we, each one of you, all of us, are loved beyond measure. We are God's amazing creation, and we are beloved beyond our imagination. And as long as we make the choice and focus on staying connected to God, we will always have what we need to weather any storm or circumstance. Thank you for letting me speak to you today.